This week, I do have my meat-scented candles keeping me company here in studio. We're going to interview Jeff Tinsley, the CEO of RealMe, to talk about online safety and security as it pertains to dating apps and online marketplaces. Next up, we welcome Gordon Draper, founder and CEO of cybermarket.com, to talk about the democratization and globalization of cybersecurity consulting. In the security news, trust no one. It's all about the information. So many Windows vulnerabilities. So many. Saudi Aramco data for sale. Sequoia, the perfectly named Linux vulnerability. Is Microsoft a national security threat? Pegasus and clickless exploits for iOS. Homoglyph domain takedowns. When DNS configuration goes wrong. And a backdoor in your backdoor. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Keeping up with security issues across thousands of web assets without the right approach to web application security is a daunting task. Get ahead with web vulnerability scanning automation from NetSparker, a leader in dynamic and interactive application security testing, known for its ease of use and accurate results. Detect a wide range of vulnerabilities in all legacy and modern web applications, address security bugs at scale by automating the confirmation process, automatically prioritize vulnerabilities, and assign actionable tickets to the right developers in their native workflows for rapid remediation. For more information on how to scale application security with ease, visit securityweekly.com/NetSparker.
Hey, welcome to the show. I'm not in the studio anymore. I'm back home. But I'd like to introduce you to the best thing that ever came out of the Vietnam era, Mr. Paul Asadoorian.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 703, recorded on July 22nd, 2021, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. I'm the only one here in studio. Well, I have my meat-scented candle seance going on here in studio. Thank you, listeners, for all of the meat-scented candles, some of which I think came from Adrian Sanabria, but that's my theory. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us remotely. Jeff, welcome.
Hello, hello.
Now, is your background the Gibson from the movie Hackers?
It is what you want it to be.
It looks like the Gibson from the movie.
It does. I should probably never use this background again.
I was waiting for it. Mr. Lee Neely is here with us as well. Lee, welcome. Lee, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
You know, if you unmute your mic, it works a lot better.
It does. It sounds fantastic. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us as well. Tyler,
I still can't believe you got meat to candles.
We got lots of meat-scented candles. I feel like the more we talk about and say meat-scented candles, the more meat-scented candles we're going to receive. And I think it's kind of fun. And they smell really good. I mean, if I'm burning the bacon one, it smells like bacon in here. It's nice. A couple of quick announcements to get started. If you missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Jeff Tinsley is the founder and CEO of RealMe, a turnkey no-cost technology solution to protect dating app users and their other online marketplaces. Today he joins us to talk about safety and security online, in online dating apps and online marketplaces. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's fun to be with this fun group, that's for sure.
It's nice to have you, Jeff. Now, are you a security practitioner or information security by trade, by nature? Like, do you get a start in information security or technology in general?
Good question. I've actually been in the internet space for about 20, I don't even know how many, 25 years. I guess I started in 1994. And back then, nobody believed that you need a website. Nobody think that the internet was going to take off the way it did. So I got started building websites, taught myself to develop, set up my own infrastructure with my own, platforms. And I think I had one of the first well, back then, T1 connections going into my mom's house, right?
Nice. That was fast back then, because the other alternative was dial-up, essentially.
Yeah, actually, what was funny was it was Pacific. I'm on the West Coast. Pac Bell was our phone service provider, and they had said they had never set up a T1 in someone's residence before. So I think I had one of the earliest T1 connections to my house. So I had to learn kind of everything in terms of infrastructure and application foundation and security related to that, all that stuff. So I'm not, the technologist today, but I definitely had to get my foundation there.
Sure. How did you come to create a company to protect online dating?
That's another good question. So, our business has actually been around for quite a while, but, RealMe has been focused for the last 5 years or so on helping people learn more about others online. But really through our research, we came to find out that just a ton of people are getting hurt out there because more and more people are connecting with strangers. And, our focus is to make the internet safer, because more than people know, and this is why I'm glad to bring this out to your audience. I mean, people are using services to connect with strangers, but we know that most people don't trust the strangers they're going to meet. And what's happening is that people are dealing with a lot of fake people out there. There are a ton of fake profiles, and people are getting scammed. Scams are on the rise. People are, stealing your money, and even, we're seeing a lot of even worse things happening. So we're trying to make an impact there, and we seem to be the only ones that are focused on this critical issue that's happening right now. So I think it's a meaningful area to invest our time and energy and effort to make less of the internet anonymous in certain contexts, and make sure that people know who they're engaging with to stop some of those major problems that are happening.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Jeff, because de-anonymizing people and being anonymous are synonymous with each other, right? We want to know who the evil people are so we can tell if they're evil or not. But if you're the victim, you may want to go through great lengths to be anonymous online. It's an interesting balance.
Good point. It's interesting what RealMe is actually trying to make all marketplaces safer, basically sites that connect strangers. It happens to be that in a dating context, we actually do some things to make sure that the user is still protecting their privacy and is semi-anonymous, but that at least they're a real person instead of a bot. And you get, you have the ability to learn a little bit more about them before you engage with them, so you're not going to get taken advantage of in some way. So there's somewhere in the middle, right? But basically what we think is that too much of the internet's anonymous, and there's no accountability, and a lot of bad shit's happening as a result of that.
It's interesting. Last week we had Jack Rosider from the Darknet Diaries podcast on the show, and since then he's released an episode, and it was centered around the victim of extortion, essentially. This person was very astute in registering short names on Twitter and Instagram, and became the victim of harassment online, but manifested itself in the real world. I mean, essentially, this person was delivering them pizzas like on a pretty consistent basis, very late into the evening, and not stopping until the intellectual property essentially was transferred to this person. So, I mean, do you deal with that's what some of the things you're trying to prevent, right?
Yeah, I mean, when the internet started, everybody loved that it was anonymous. Anybody could be whoever they want. There was like a cartoon from like the New Yorker or something like that.
The dog.
You guys remember? Some of you might be old enough. I'm old enough, obviously.
Anyone can be a dog on the internet, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. So, so it actually caused a lot of problems, right? So, but I think it's probably because not everybody realized that so many important connections and conversations and interactions and transactions were going to happen online, right? So it's like at first it was fun to just be someone other than yourself, but then next thing you know, you're dating online, you're buying and selling online, all kinds of stuff. And people have taken advantage of the fact that most of the internet's anonymous, and there are certain contexts where you probably shouldn't be, right? And people are getting hurt, and that's what it comes down to. A lot of fake profiles, like I said, etc. People are fake. People are taking advantage of people. FTC says as far as scams, romance scams are the single biggest category. They've increased 3x over the last many years in terms of scams, and just in dating sites, right?
And how would you describe rather, Jeff, a romance scam?
Yeah, so I'm going to take from what the FTC has about this and the way that they define it, but it's like what we understand is happening is that you've got a lot of people just totally falsifying identities, claiming to be a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is take advantage of the fact that somebody else wants to get into a relationship, right? So they'll tell them anything that they want to hear. And then they come up with scams to basically say, well, I'd love to see you, but I'm stuck in my country and I need you to send money for me to come visit you. Or,
right.
Oh, I just had a terrible accident and I need your help, where they've already basically tried to take advantage of that person on the other side to make them fall in love and then get them to transfer money, things like that. And it's prevalent. It's the single biggest category of fraud according to the FTC, and it's growing like crazy. And we also found that for what it's worth, and hopefully your listeners are actually going to pay attention to this too, at least give them pause when they're interacting with a stranger. Scams have actually exploded since the pandemic too. Right. That's another thing that we've noticed.
Well, yeah, because you don't want to leave your house, so you're going to commit the crimes from your house even more so than before. Increase that adoption. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way, as increasing fraud, essentially, or an online crime.
Yeah, well, all of us are using these different services where you connect with people you don't know. Look, all of us have even friends on so-called friends, right?
Right.
On Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But do you know who these people are? No. A lot of the time you don't. Some of them you do, right? But when you're actually engaging in certain, even those environments can be risky too, right? But then sometimes you're in environments where there's a lot of money on the line, and bottom line is a lot of the statistics around the fact that people are getting tricked. We've got a guy that works for us. I'm not going to name his name, right? But he happens to date online a lot. And this is how crazy the problem is, okay? I asked him the question, it's how often do you get tricked by bots, right? Or it wasn't really put that way. How often do you think you're end up engaging with bots? And one of the most popular services out there, I'll just call him out. Why not? Tinder. He uses Tinder a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The guy at our company said that basically about 75% of the time, this is just his gut right around it. He said it's a totally fake girl on the other side
mm-hmm.
that's talking to him. And the conversations are sophisticated. The bots are so sophisticated. They're getting into conversations about life and love and God and the universe and all this kind of shit. And he can't even really tell until pretty far into the conversation that they're
mm-hmm.
fake, right? And then, these guys that are scammers and such, they're then engaging with you at a certain point. Sometimes a real person takes over to then try to take advantage.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that it worked in a hierarchy like that. The bots are kind of your initial hook, and then at some point a real person takes over. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's all out there, right? Wherever there's an opportunity to take advantage of people are sophisticated around how they're going to do it. And it's a shame, but there's obviously simple solutions around in certain kind of contexts. I mean, we think it's the responsibility of these service providers that are connecting strangers to basically do some simple verification about that the person is real and have some kind of history and access to available to the consumer about who that person is, what they've done in the past, and take the responsibility as a platform to start cutting out the bad actors and be proactive in that respect.
Right. And you and I and most of us on the show and listening know that they don't want that, because that means their total user count goes down and they're not going to get the next big funding round or get acquired, which is a sad reality about the economics that happen in tech today. But would you agree that's probably the number one reason?
You know what? I think that's a really astute observation and probably hypothesis and right. And it's right. I mean, like it appears that about 50% of the profiles out there are fake. I mean, it does vary between site because some services, just still focusing on dating, do more than others around verifying their users and cutting out the bad actors. But we think from we've modeled some of this out. We think at the end of the day, there's a low level of trust in these environments. 85% of the people out there, at least in the United States, that are using a variety of services, dating or any other buying and selling services, are not trusting the other people that they're going to engage with. And so with that low level of trust, it's like, look, a simple solution for the services is to verify the users, make the consumers feel safer and actually make them safer. And you're going to have a more sustainable business, because the other thing we learned through a nationwide study is that if the consumers feel safe and it is a safer environment, they're going to use those safer environments more than alternatives. And it's a big problem out there. And maybe short term, a company could, if they have a lot of bots, could be affected in terms of activity on the service. But if you really care, it's a responsibility we feel of the service providers to make their customers safe. And it's going to be better for business in the long run. You're going to beat out the other guys that are actually just don't care that bots are taking over your environment.
But I think privacy laws and regulations could also come into play, where the providers don't want to store or collect in any capacity personally identifiable information about their customers, because then they can be held liable. Certainly GDPR and other in California. Is that also one reason why they're not basically giving consumers like a validation check, because they need to store this personal data or at least handle it?
Well, I mean, there's nothing illegal about asking a user to give you some basic information about who they are, right? And that cuts across a lot of fields. I mean, I know there are more restrictions when you're getting into asking for things like social security number, but some of the basics are a good idea to collect, first name, last name, age, and zip, whether you're showing it on your site to the other users or not, and use that as a simple, there various, layers of being able to provide authentication on the user. A simple one is just asking for that, checking to make sure, using a service like RealMe to check and make sure that that person does even really exist, and then being able to give the consumer the ability to know more about who that person is and their behaviors in the past and on other sites, so that they can make an informed decision about who they're going to engage with, right? So there are lightweight ways to do it, which are, without, there are no legal issues around doing anything like this, of course. It's like, we've got to follow the law. We're compliant with the various laws out there, of course, related to these kinds of things. And
right.
I think people are some of the platforms themselves, dating sites and others, are just starting to realize that there are easy ways to do these things, and that it's going to be good for their users.
Jeff, how does your service work? Does it do I give you like an online profile from a service, and then you report back a score of like 1 to 10? This account's a bot or not, or reputation score?
Well, the simple kind of integrations that we have with some of the dating guys out there, they're passing over some information which is protected and encrypted about who the user is that they have, and we're able to verify that it's actually a real individual in the United States, right? And then for the consumer, they're able to simply see that, hey, this guy, when I'm looking at their profile, I know that they're real. And then if I want to learn more about them, I can click through and learn a bit more about them, to make a good choice about whether I'm going to engage with them. And part of our whole kind of model looking out is that the network of participants are all feeding back in information about who the good and the bad actors are, so that every other, marketplace or dating site that's part of the network is actually benefiting from the collection of the centralized information about those behaviors. Mm-hmm. So long story short, it's like, as more and more services participate and integrate RealMe, which is really easy, the service and the ability to secure, to protect the consumers only gets better.
Mm. So your play is a B2B play with the providers, not necessarily with the individual?
Well, it's really a B2B2C. So our objective at the end of the day is to make these dating sites and marketplaces that connect strangers safer, right? And make them more trusted. But when these services do integrate us, it's the consumers that are really benefiting, so they can see who's real and so they can learn more about the other folks. So it's really a B2B2C model. Our platform is working with the companies that reach a lot of consumers that they can help.
Sorry, Jeff, Lee, did you guys have questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, are you having any trouble with scaling? I mean, it seems like these sites are pretty active and you'd be like struggling to keep up.
Struggling to keep up as far as scalability?
Yeah,
of the No, fortunately, we've been around for a while, and
Jeff launched his first site on a T1. You know about scalability.
Oh my God, I have to tell you. Well, as a side note, it's like before I got the T1, I was hosting websites on a 28.8 dial-up connection.
Wow.
So I had a static IP, dialed into my local ISP. And then I use dynamic routing. I can't even remember what some of these terms are anymore. Like, to basically take requests for different domains and funnel them to different kind of experiences in the application. Anyway, I'm going too far there. So yeah, I've been around the block. So yeah, I'm glad we don't have a T1 anymore. We have a little bit better connection than that. And we have a serious infrastructure that we've invested more than $50 million in for this purpose. So yeah. So handling the requests from these different sites that are connecting strangers, it's not a big deal at all, and the lookups are easy and that sort of thing. So what's going in our favor is seriously that I think finally people are starting these services like the dating guys are starting to realize there's a major problem. It's the number one security related concern for dating sites, because we ran a study asking the executives at these dating sites, and it goes beyond dating, but the dating executives said that security for their consumers is the number one issue that they're thinking about. And so everybody's starting to realize they have to do something because too many people are getting hurt, and it's their responsibility, to keep those users safe, and it's good for business at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's good for business, and Ashley Madison was a shining example of what can happen if you don't, protect your users' data. I want to ask you about the verification check, Jeff. Is that, obviously, I don't know if they're secret sauce or not, right? But like, how are you validating that a person is actually who they say they are? We as hackers sometimes will go through great lengths to create fake people to accomplish our missions in an effort to make organizations safer at the end of the day. But how easy is it to fool the system? Like, what are the checks like?
I think that right now the checking is a little bit lightweight for my taste, right? But nevertheless, something's definitely better than nothing. But we're looking at adding a lot of additional capability around, even believe it or not, biometric checks and actual, government issued identity kind of checks on the surface kind of level, tied to other public and government source data, which we already have, to really strengthen kind of that part of our service. So what we have is a little bit lightweight, but we're adding a lot to that. But it's definitely better than what any of these services are doing today.
Right. Jeff.
The other Jeff, that is. I hope.
The other Jeff. Yeah, Jeff man.
I'm curious, as you're collecting this data on behalf of your customers or customers, are you retaining it, or are you just simply getting, scores or reports? I guess my concern is if you start collecting a whole bunch of data on people, you yourself become a target, and you yourself have security concerns and regulatory compliance concerns like GDPR. So what are you doing to address the protection of the data that you're collecting?
No, that's a good question. So we've been around for a while. We like to think that we have a good platform and some pretty good security. But related to the laws and what we're collecting and what we're able to retain, we're really careful about what we're doing in that regard. I'm sure everyone can always do better. I mean, I know some of the biggest services in the world out there have been hacked. So everybody's always at some level of risk. But for the partners, the set of information that we're collecting is actually quite minimal, and we're retaining only what we need to in order to satisfy the consumer to know, like, give them a chance to learn more about another person. The other key piece of information we are collecting for the benefit of the network is being able to relate user A on one dating site, let's say, to another user, so that if we know he's a bad actor and he's only acting poorly in one environment and scamming people, that the other node in the network, the other other company that's using the RealMe platform is beneficiaries of that knowledge. So we try to keep the footprint in terms of the data collection to a minimum, but just doing what we need to satisfy to make the site itself more trusted and make the consumer safer and give them access to what they need to know.
What kind of adoption do you have so far from, like, just platforms and general users? Is this like taking off? Are you at like a 10% market cap? Like, what's the level of adoption you're getting?
Yeah, I mean, what I think is going to happen, we already have a bunch of deals signed that haven't even gone live. We just haven't, a handful of dating sites that are live so far, but again, agreements with a bunch of others. I think pretty much every dating site is going to be incorporating some kind of, verification and access to additional background and historical behavioral data for their consumers within the next year or two. I think it's going to be it's a must-have kind of thing. And we're happy to hear that, top of mind for the executives, at least at the dating companies, is this. Like I said, security. The consumers want it. People are getting hurt. They need to do something about it. So what we're starting to see is that we're pretty much talking to every big dating service out there. But and so I'm glad that they've all gotten responsible and gotten excited about the need to do this for their consumers and for their business. But really, there's so many areas on the internet that need to do the same thing. I mean, you guys think about the services that you use where, like I said, you're connecting with strangers. I mean, you've got whatever. I could just cut them off. You're buying and selling online with strangers all the time, right? eBay's still a huge business. You've got, is it OfferUp or, another marketplace? You got Facebook getting into marketplace kind of business where it's like people are buying and selling with each other. A lot of transactions are going through Venmo where you don't even know who you're sending money to. There are so many places where you're engaging with somebody you just don't know, and it's just not safe, and it's easily kind of addressed. So sky's the limit. Really, we've been focused on the dating space for a bit, and every dating site seems to be moving toward implementing the RealMe platform because nobody else is really doing this.
Is there a premium service where if I'm a user of a dating site, I can get the person's who wants to date me, their credit score and their criminal record? Joking.
Well,
or do you check that? I mean, do you check that kind of? I mean, there's a lot of privacy, implications here, but some of the data is pertinent to the marketplaces and or dating sites that you're using. Certainly a credit check, perhaps with someone I'm going to do a financial transaction with. Maybe I don't need to know their credit score, Jeff, right? But is it a thumbs up, thumbs down, from a credit perspective? Have you considered stuff like that?
We should have you as an advisor. I think you're right on target with all this stuff. So, part of what we do is
I only take a small percentage of equity to be an advisor, Jeff. Let's talk.
Paul, you're right on target. It's everybody that's using these kinds of, at least dating service, focusing in on that for a second, they try to go and check out who the other person is, right? It's just not always easy.
Well, for us in the hacker community, we'll do that and rely on each other to do that, and we'll do that for friends, right? But that we'll only get so far with this number of people with that skill set, right? Even if we're Tyler certainly is a shining example. Someone's happy to do that for people, right? But we're only going to get so far.
Right. No, you're right on. It's not easy still, right? I mean, before we started doing what we're doing, it wasn't easy for people to go and really check out any individual. You have to do a lot of work, right? So some of the hard work we've done is actually aggregating the information from a variety of sources right, for the purpose of being able to validate identities and be able to know more about them. So we actually do give in the dating context on a site. You're on Tinder. You're looking at someone that you're really interested in. You want to learn more about them. Some of the information that we are able to share with you so you can make sure you're dealing with a real person, know more about them, is some of the background information. We don't have credit information, though that I think you're probably right, Paul. To some people, that's actually important also.
Right.
I think,
but I think important, Jeff, in the context, like, I don't know if you serve a marketplace. I mean, Angie's List was one of those kind of .com-ish startups, right? I think I'd love the modern Angie's List today, because it's really hard to find good contractors to do work on your home. Specifically, I'm going to use that as an example. And I think there, a credit check, but also a better business bureau check. Like, is this a reputable business? Yelp is like a crowdsourced thing that I'm sure you looked at Yelp and was like, I can do better than Yelp for dating sites and marketplaces, right? But I think this can be applied to different markets to make sure I'm doing business with someone that has a good reputation at the end of the day.
You're totally right? And like the kind of the crazy, scary example that people talk about out there, and as far as marketplaces more generally concerned, is like Craigslist. I mean, how many stories have all of us read about people that put something up for sale, a stranger comes over to their house, or the other thing that goes on is people put stuff up for sale, they're not even real, right? And they're trying to scam you. I just recently heard about, and I guess it's pretty prevalent, people putting puppies up for sale. Have you guys read about this?
Yeah, because there's a huge demand, because everyone was home during the pandemic, so everyone out and got a dog, and now there's a shortage on getting especially certain breeds of dogs.
Right. So everybody wanted a puppy. You're right. Like, and they're putting them for thousands of dollars. They get you to send money in advance, and then you're screwed. Or even worse, they're getting you to send some Bitcoin or something like that. So it's getting worse and worse and worse, frankly, So that's what we're trying to stop with RealMe.
So what about the dating sites where people want to be semi-anonymous? Like, there are some of these that kind of hinge on the anonymity.
Really, Tyler? Which sites are these, Tyler?
I have no. You're asking the wrong guy here.
There's a balancing act there, because even with what we do for the dating sites, we're not showing someone's first and last name. We're not showing where they live or anything like that. What we're doing is when you find Tanya on Tinder, right, we're helping you know that Tanya is actually a real person. Then you're able to learn more about Tanya, but not. Yeah,
but I think the next step from that, Jeff, I want to know if Tanya's married or not. Right? I mean, that's to Tyler's point. Like, that's a pretty good piece of data in this situation.
And can I pay extra to know that?
Right.
Yeah, that is part of the whole thing. It's like we're trying to help you learn more about this person. I mean, even helping you know like what they post in social media environments and such. Are they married? Going beyond like, are they a real person? It's just generally speaking, people want to know more rather than less, and they should.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, essentially, what you're coming down to, Jeff, is like, did this person lie in their profile or not? Right?
Oh my gosh, and the lying is prevalent.
Yeah.
Like, I think we have some studies. I don't have the statistics offhand. It's like, first of all, like I shared with you guys, 30 to 50% of the profiles are fake altogether, right, in these dating sites.
So you can't even, it's like whether it is a person that may be lying, or whether it's a person that's just trying to create a fake persona or a bot that's creating a fake persona. There are three different things almost.
Right. And we actually found that even if they're a real person, like you said, it's like they're lying about the details about who they are. People lie about their age. People are putting up old pictures.
Yeah.
Right. There are a lot of different issues that are taking place. And one of the things that we found is that for whatever reason, the younger generation lies more. And at the same time, they know each other are lying. So the level of trust is even lower, which makes, the challenge is even greater for the dating sites or any marketplace for that matter. Right. So it's like there's just a low level of trust, and it seems like things are getting worse.
Jeff, do you have a question?
Well, Sort of a question comment. Up until a couple weeks ago, I guess it was just last week, Security and Compliance Weekly, where we did a focused episode on HIPAA and learned again that, only sort of organizations that are directly involved in the healthcare industry and are registered and have a designation as a third party, something or other. I kept thinking, a lot of this, checking the accuracy and the efficacy of reported information, this could almost bleed into HIPAA territory. Are they really male? Are they really female? Are they trans? Do we care? Height, weight, hair color? I mean, it again just seems kind of borderline, the kind of information that you're collecting or observing and checking, where it becomes an issue for your company in and of itself, or depending on how much information you share with your customers.
I think, Jeff,
it seems like it's a fine line to walk in terms of the regulatory.
I agree. Yeah, like Jeff, what do you check and validate versus share? Because that's an important distinction.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, first of all, we're figuring this out over time. Our objective is to make the, consumers safer, make these sites more trusted and not have issues. Some of the basics are around just making sure somebody's real or not. Mm-hmm. In terms of the information that you bring forward, we're bringing forward a lot of just basics right now, and we'll figure out where that line really is. But we're already hiding things that are probably a bit too personal or too private, about a person right now, good or bad. We'll see where the market goes here, but like the basics are just making sure you're not going to, you're dealing with a real person, you know a little bit more about them. Do they have a history of actually scamming people? Wouldn't you like to know that? That they have a history of scamming people, so you can still choose to move ahead with the transaction. But just like in the real world, if you hear from a friend that this guy's a bad guy, like you're going to consider that. You still might do business with them. You still might engage with them for some reason, because maybe that's okay with you, or they gave you a different impression. But just some of the basics need to be brought forward as far as who they are and what some of their history is, so that you at least are better informed. And even if these guys, there's more and more of these companies like do apply, use RealMe or try and cobble together their own kind of thing. It's like it's going to make a dent in terms of the reducing kind of the negative outcomes, right? So bringing more information forward is probably good, and let the consumer make an informed decision there. That's kind of like where we are right now.
And it's different Sorry, Jeff, it is different from a rating system in that RealMe goes to reliable sources to make a determination, whereas you mentioned eBay, and Amazon has a marketplace, right, which is pretty popular because like nothing is in stock on Amazon, so I got to buy it from a third party, and they've got these ranking systems. Yelp is a similar thing where it's crowdsourced. But I want to know that someone's done some kind of background check without having to do it every time I make a transaction, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I'm sorry, I changed my view because I realized, with my bald head, it's like the background there is just shining off my bald.
You don't look like a deity anymore.
You were glowing. You were very glowing. You have a glowing personality, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, we actually have a little bit of both. I mean, we have at the core kind of like we've gathered information about individuals from a variety of sources, including public and government sources. But a part of the whole platform allows people to share their experiences with another person, right? Because think about it, in real life, as the example I gave earlier, I mean, that's what really happens. I'm going to go out with a friend. I'm getting set up. A friend has perhaps set me up with someone. This is not the case for me, by the way. I'm engaged, but so just for example purposes only. You're probably going to hear a little bit about that person, right? So that is something that we do allow for in the environment. So if you go on a date with someone and maybe you have, not the best experience, you might be able to share that and say, like, what, Bill was a gentleman, but there just wasn't a right fit, but I appreciate that he pulled the chair out for me and, was considerate the entire time, and he's a wonderful guy, and somebody else should date him. That's okay. Right? Or, obviously things could be a lot worse, but we think getting that feedback from the people that are engaging with the others is actually an important element of what we're doing as part of being able to help you learn more about the people that you're going to engage with.
Yeah, I've got
Jeff.
another question. How much of what you do is sort of predicated on, sort of the people that are signing up to use the service that, want to vet the people they're connecting with, but, how much of it's vetting those people and how much of it has to do with them, filling out certain forms, clicking on opting in, consent to being, going through some sort of background investigation, something like that?
Well, I mean, as more and more of these services adopt a way to make sure that, they're validating the users and helping you learn more about other folks, it's just as important, obviously, in that environment that you manage how you look, right? So if you're going to be a participant, it's critical that you are aware of what's out there about you, what it says about you, what people are saying about you, and manage your public persona, how you're perceived, right? Your reputation, really, at the end of the day, right? It's critical, because if you look, and we do it in the real world, right? I mean, in the morning, we all, well, some of us, I guess, I'm not always dressed like this even, right? We're pretty casual here at work, but when we're going out to meet people, we get dressed up, brush our teeth, right? Try to present ourselves well. And so that's a critically important part of the whole ecosystem. Really, at the end of the day, with accountability, for your actions, really think that at the end of the day, we start driving more positive behavior, right? If there's accessibility to how you act as a person, just like in the real world, but really brought online, it's going to drive more positive, good behavior and less bad behavior, right? Because you're going to get, it's going to affect you. Does that make sense?
Well, we have to be careful, Jeff, that we're not going to all end up on an episode of Black Mirror where everyone's rated based on whether they're a good citizen or not. I don't know if you saw that episode, but
it's where they might be going. No, I mean, but everybody that's using this system, it's a matter of perspective, is the them that somebody else wants to vet. Right?
I don't know if I quite understood that. Everybody that's using the system is going to want to make sure that they look good, or I'm sorry, were you saying something?
If I'm a user and I've never used a dating app, but if I did and I was concerned about the person that I was communicating with and wanted to do the check, whatever, get the rating, get the gold star, whatever it was, I'm interested in using the service either through my provider or directly with you to get the rating of the person. But they, in turn, might be equally as interested in finding out whether I really am a 16-year-old girl that's a cheerleader for the high school football team in Topeka, Kansas.
Right.
So it's all a matter of perspective. But I would think you're being sort of person neutral. You're checking everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's a part of we're all individuals in the real world, right? And we're accountable for what we do. And there are laws about bad behavior and things like that. Well, right now the internet seems to be still with the wild, wild west. But you're right. Simply put, it's everybody that's participating in these environments, especially environments where you're just connecting with strangers, both sides of the equation are going to want to know right? Who the other person is, so they're safe. And it goes beyond just safety, of course. It's even if you know that they're real and the person is safe, there are benefits to being able to know a little bit more about the other person that you're going to engage with in certain contexts, especially dating. And if you're buying and selling online, you probably don't care as much about the fact that somebody likes puppies and is a good person. But you want to know that they're real and haven't scammed a bunch of other folks, right? So
yeah, and I also want to know if that person has been involved and convicted of a violent crime. That goes through my head when I use things like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. We've bought and sold a lot of stuff through the various online marketplaces, and there's always, largely because I work in cybersecurity and have instilled doubt and fear and skepticism in everything we do, especially if it touches online. My wife is always we need to meet in a public place. We need to make sure someone else is home. Because she's one of her fears, and my fears too, is like, what if that person is some kind of violent offender or something?
No, you just described the perfect example of a use case, right? And why a platform like RealMe needs to be applied to more of these environments, because the stories are all over the place,
right?
And they're horrifying, right? I mean, I've almost been scammed. Gosh, I have been scammed, that's for sure. But I've almost been scammed a number of other times, many other times, because too few of these environments are actually doing anything in order to try and improve the security of those environments and the safety of the customers, right?
But like, has your skepticism ever made you feel bad? Because it has for me, where you're always skeptical. You're like, I don't know. And then like the dude that bought my tires pulled up in like the nicest Mercedes like I've ever seen and like gave me cash and it was totally fine. I'm like, oh my God. I'm a really paranoid person, you know? And I feel bad because you're basically judging people. I mean, because you don't know who the person is really because they're online, and you're almost judging that this person's going to be a criminal or a scam artist.
No, you're right on target. It's like, but what did your parents always tell you? Right? Don't talk to
strangers. Yeah.
Right. Well, the unfortunate truth is now, thanks to the internet, hey, a lot of good has come out of this. There are a lot of good services that are connecting strangers that facilitate transactions. These services are putting them together. Okay, so you have to talk to strangers, right? But as long as you're talking to a stranger, wouldn't you rather know a bit more about them so that you can, make a decision as to whether or not you wanted to move forward? So we're talking to strangers, but hopefully they won't be as strange, right? With a platform like this, with RealMe. So that's the objective. And yeah, I feel a little bit bad too, but I'll tell you what, I'm so close to it. I've seen the statistics. I mean, not only have I been a victim, right, but I've seen the statistics around how bad it's getting in terms of people getting taken advantage of and hurt. And it freaks me out even more. So, so I think for the people that are listening on this, I mean, I'm happy that we're getting our kind of like business story out there a bit, but really, if if anything comes out of this, even just a little bit comes out for your consumers, I mean, everybody should be a bit more wary because the statistics are pretty bad around the bad stuff going on out there. And so don't be a victim, be a little bit more careful. If a service you're using has not implemented RealMe, go try and check the people out that you're engaging with, right? Because there's too much bad stuff happening out there and we don't want that to happen.
Jeff, there's a big difference between getting scammed, being out some money, versus getting hurt, losing your life, right? What are the statistics on each? I mean, is it pretty, like both are pretty prevalent, basically, or scamming, I would imagine, is probably higher than getting hurt?
You know what? I don't have a breakdown in front of me. We've done a few kind of nationwide studies on this topic. What I know offhand is that 30% of the population has been a victim in one way or another. Gotcha. 30% of the U.S. population, scam, fraud, or worse.
Right.
What I don't know off
is the breakdown. Yeah.
Kind of like what has there been? What's the breakdown of like the violent kind of stuff, the really bad stuff, the really horrifying things that are happening out there? But it happens. You can read the stories all over the place. But I don't know the composition of that 30% that's been hurt in the United States. But at the end of the day, if that's our objective, is get rid of this. None of it should be happening, right? Especially the really horrifying stuff. Money is one thing, but life is another, obviously.
Sure.
I want to, if I can take a second to shift gears a little bit, Paul. I'm thinking about possible applications of what it is you're doing in my day job, where I do a lot of consulting based on compliance. One of the requirements is pre-employment screening, and I'm wondering if if what you're doing in terms of, I know you're not going out and doing the actual checks, you're aggregating them from sources, but if you do it in such a way that's efficient and cost effective, e.g. cheaper, there might be some, not just into online marketplaces, but into companies that are just trying to hire employees, especially the ones that like to take looks at people's Facebook, Instagram, whatever pages before they hire them, that type of thing. Which begs the question, which I'm finally getting to, is so you collect all this data. This is a question I ask the HR departments of lots of my customers. You get all this data, then what? What do you do with it? How do you make a determination besides the obvious? Oh, this is a convicted child sex offender, and he's got his own website naming him. But when it's background checks, criminal investigations, whatever else is that you're doing, you just simply turn the data over, or are you playing at all, or researching, attempting to figure out the rating system? What matters? What are the indicators of buyer beware? Or is it simply more a matter of here's what we found, do with it what you will?
Yeah, a couple of interesting questions in there. I mean, one is that, for what it's worth, it's the laws are such, we actually are not what's called a CRA. We're not a consumer reporting agency. So people are not allowed to use our data assets for determination of things like employment, credit, whether you want to rent a place to someone. So the service is not used for that purpose. And we're really careful about making sure that people are aware of what the laws are. Frankly, I think the laws are outdated, but nevertheless, we are careful to adhere to those laws. So you're not really supposed to you're not allowed to use the service. And we tell people, you're not allowed to use our service for those restricted reasons. Dating and checking out somebody that's you're buying and selling with, that's totally fine. But related to your other question about the data assets, we actually do in our environment, we have actually done some scoring, right? Because we on our side can, pulling in all of this information from a variety of sources, we have taken the time to structure that data and understand what it means and bring that forward for the consumer. But we can only do so well there. At the end of the day, human beings are smarter than the computers, at least right now, right? Mm-hmm. All right, maybe I guess, was it Watson that beat Kasparov? But anyway, it's like, we think, bringing the information forward so that we might be able to put some scoring at the top, but you as an individual are going to be able to judge the information, make use of the information, interpret that information better than we probably can today. So we just try to bring that information forward for you to consider, right?
Which begs the question: what do your lawyers say? You got to have them on retainer, because sooner or later, if it hasn't happened already, somebody's going to come after you for the negative image that you portrayed and the action that someone did or didn't take. Yeah,
well, we're kind of like just the middleman that's like kind of aggregated the information, and we're not trying to make people look bad.
I think we call that the messenger.
Yeah, because you're not going to sue the credit bureau because you have a poor credit score, or the database that has your criminal information because someone found out you're a criminal, right? That's.
You know what, Paul, your example of like kind of the credit kind of company is just spot on. Even though we're not a credit company, we're not a consumer reporting agency. It has some similar elements to it, right? We're trying to bring information forward so you can make decisions in other contexts outside of credit and tenancy and those things that are restricted. So yeah, nobody loves necessarily having a credit score, but it's something that's valuable, right? We have a score right now. The score is not necessarily the most valuable thing in our environment. The score basically for us is like an easy way for a consumer to understand a quick summary of what's maybe contained within any given kind of RealMe profile. But really, at the end of the day, the consumers are looking at the details about who that person is and their behavior to make a choice, right? But I really appreciate kind of the you really get all this stuff, Paul. Like it's the platform itself. It's like we're trying to facilitate a smart choice, right? And we're not trying to make anybody look bad. Everybody needs to be accountable and responsible for their own behaviors at the end of the day. So it isn't the wild, wild west.
And you may not care. And a lot of that is just the history of hackers. Some hackers have been convicted of crimes and they got great jobs as a result. Again, to our audience, I'm not suggesting if you go commit a crime today and get convicted that's a way to get a job. It is not. That's I think very much a legacy thing. But again, it allows the employer, in this example, right, allows the employer to make a decision whether or not you want to hire that person. It's not saying it's a, binary thing, 0 or 1, like the criminal record, no. Some employers, yes. Some employers, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, like in the RealMe service, it's like employers are not to use our, service for this purpose. We're working with, like I said, dating sites and marketplaces, services that connect strangers, where it's not about employment, tenancy, credit, those sorts of things I mentioned that are restricted. But yeah, otherwise you got it exactly right.
Do you see the RealMe platform kind of taking off with a digital identity for something, say like a legacy social security number replacement? I know you guys are doing some work with New Zealand and the government there for some of their identification. Do you see that taking off in other places where we have legacy systems that are outdated that could tie into voter systems or single sign-on for things like voting?
I mean, I think a lot of companies out there have tried to create a centralized kind of identity that can be used in a variety of different purposes, right? And that still needs to be, I think there are a lot of benefits to somebody really pulling that off. I mean, for us, we are just trying to make these, these marketplaces that connect strangers safer. I mean, if that's successful, then obviously there are a lot of opportunities to extend that core capability to centralize, give other kind of capabilities and utility around use of your identity. But at least for us, short-term, our mission is pretty simple. It's like, I just want less crime, less scamming, less fraud, fewer people getting hurt in negative ways. And so, gosh, our aspirations are not as big as maybe what yours. I mean, those are that.
Good for you, Jeff. Stick to the problem you solve and your point of view, man.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're trying to do.
Good job of that. Yeah.
That's what we can. We're not trying to bite off more than what we could chew right now. There are big problems in the areas that we're trying to help right now.
Jeff, are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly? You didn't get prepped on this? Oh, no one gets prepped on this.
You know what? The guys told me, like, you're not sharing anything with me. You're just going to put me on the spot, like with all kinds of stuff.
Right. That's essentially what we did.
Is your first question, is this my real hair?
No. But there are 5 questions.
But is the guy behind you in the framed article, is that you in a younger day?
Yeah, it is. That's me.
Hilarious.
That's
nice observation, Jeff.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, my first company was kind of a marketplace for domain names. So we didn't own domain names. We just kind of like had almost like an eBay, like for domain names. So anyway, I made the cover of this funny little magazine.
That was like right after you had to call like the one woman who would assign you the domain name. I never knew that existed, but I was listening to one of the books I recently listened to. And they said there was a time where, like, when you needed a domain name, you would literally call this one person, and that person would help you register your domain name.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, back in like '94, you had to fill out this form. It felt like you were sending something into a government, into the government. It was like an IRS type form, right? And you were just hoping that would come back, or you were able to get the domain name. Very funny.
Now you can. Now it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
For sure. So, Jeff, Security Weekly 5 questions. Are you ready?
All right. I'll do the best I can.
3 words to describe yourself.
Bald, happy, and bald. No, bald, happy, and appreciative.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Oh my God. I'm the guy that's trying to keep people from doing bad things out there.
It's just a hypothetical. There's no right or wrong answers, and we don't judge you until the recording stops. So,
God, it's so funny. It's just not my nature. It's like, I love people. Like, I know you guys don't know me. It's like, this isn't bullshit. I mean, it's like the idea of hurting a human being is just it's not who I am. I can't even answer that question.
No answer is an answer. So
what comes to mind is like clue. It's like, are those my options? Like rope, candlestick, or whatever?
In the library, because you're in the library. So
I'm in the library.
Revolver, wrench,
revolver, Jeff in the library. Yeah.
It wouldn't be a revolver. I'm not a gun guy. I'm afraid of guns, but I don't know. Whatever. Candlestick, because I have one right back here.
There you go.
Not my nature, Ben.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I'm tired. No.
Sorry, go ahead.
Learning to love everybody. I know it sounds sick, and maybe this isn't for your audience, but like I just have this soft kind of like core to me.
What's your favorite hacker movie? Do you watch hacker movies, Jeff? Have you seen hacker movies in the past?
What have I seen? Give me some examples. I mean, one of my favorite movies that's out there is The Matrix, right? I mean,
we'd classify that as a hacker movie. Yep.
Yeah.
But what we really want to know is sneakers
or hackers
or war games or hackers. These are movies from the 80s and 90s.
War game.
I loved war games. That's how old I am. Loved war games.
Whoever's making the tally, that's another one for me.
No, the war games is neutral ground for Jeff and I. Sneakers, you're in camp, Jeff. Hackers, you're in camp, Paul. Like war games,
team
Tron,
Paul, team
Matrix. Jeff. Like you're somewhere in between, right? That's the middle ground.
I think we need a Gartner quadrant for all this.
We do. Yes. Jeff, choose two celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
You guys, you're. This is a wild group. Two parents, two famous people to be my parents. Shit. I don't even like follow that world, to be honest with you. My fiance happens to be a real actress, but it's like I don't stay close to that whole world.
You probably don't want to pick her as your mom. That would be weird.
That'd be weird.
Yeah.
But we won't judge till after the show.
No. How about Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones?
There you go. There you go. Fantastic. Jeff, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Hey, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the time.
With that, we're going to take a short break, come back with Gordon Draper. Stick around.